Hello, I'm Stuart Craner. Welcome to this session, which is part of 3 days of webinars venturing into the ecosystem future. I'm Director of the Business Ecosystem Alliance, and we're delighted once again to be partnering with the Higher Model Institute on this virtual event, exploring the very latest thinking and best practice in the field of business ecosystems. Our 10 sessions feature some of the leading lights in thinking and practice, including Jim Moore, Liz Altman, Michael Jacobides, Tammy Madsen, Kyan Krippendorf, and Andrea Cates. All of the sessions will be available after the event. We're excited that people from more than 50 countries worldwide have signed up for these sessions. So welcome to you, wherever you are joining from. Please send in your comments, thoughts, questions, and queries at any time during the session. Now, this session promises a complete rethink of how we understand and interact with our customers. Thanks to technology, there are a myriad of ways of gathering information on customers. Indeed, organizations have never known more about their customers than they do today. But that does not automatically translate into close, mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their customers. To shed new light on how this can be achieved, I welcome our three speakers. They are Nick van Langendonck, founder of Unbossers, Laurent Zintz, who is the CFO of the Projective Group, and joining us from Qingdao in China is William Malek, author of Executing Your Strategy. Welcome, everyone. Well, perhaps we can start by talking to Nick about Unbossers. Can you explain, Nick, what Unbossers is, what it does, how it's organized, and how it's different? Not necessarily in
Sure.
that
order. Sure. Thank you for having us, Stuart. So Unbossers is a business ecosystem. So that means that we bring together different companies from different businesses, different backgrounds, and we help them create value together. And the value that we help them create together is centered around how we can elevate or shift our corporate cultures. And the role of Unbossers is to facilitate the process in which these companies are acting as consultants to one another to learn and inspire and challenge each other on how to basically adopt RenDanHeYi like principles and or zero distance to customer principles in their own organization.
Let's just pause on a couple of technical details there. That RenDanHeYi is the management philosophy of the Chinese company Haier, and this is my understanding of it, and correct me if I'm wrong. It's a fusion of the word employee and customer equals value, basically.
Yeah, indeed.
Just for people watching.
Yeah. So for me, it narrows down to two things. One, you create a culture in which the people in the company become entrepreneurs. And that's not really like a change in function or a change in role. It's really about embracing the lifestyle of an entrepreneur. And secondly, the zero distance to customer aspect, where you strive as an organization to be as close to your customers as you possibly can, and basically let them decide what your priorities should be, what your services and products should be, and so on.
Don't you think most organizations, most people think they are close to their customers? They may not be, but they all think they are close to their customers, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's true. And the example that comes to mind is one corporate company that I know that also claimed it. But when I was there, I noticed that the most important meeting of the year was when the CEO of the corporate company came to the local office. That really blocked the agendas for the coming 3 weeks. Everything was stalled and everything was focused on making sure that all the slides were prepared, and everything was foreseen for the CEO to have a nice stay there. And I remember challenging that, like, if the customer is really the most important, how come then the most important meeting is internally focused?
Well, tell us a bit about your background and how you came to form Unbossers. What was the backstory to it?
Well, I've been on a mission since I graduated after my first corporate experience to have a large-scale impact on corporate culture. My first job in a corporate was a disappointment. I couldn't believe how unmotivating the offices were. I saw people always arguing, shouting with each other. I saw people sleeping behind their computers. I was so looking forward to get to work, and that was like the disappointment of a lifetime. And I said, okay, this is that's where my mission started. And then in the past 15 years, I've been quite active in trying to build entrepreneurial platforms with micro enterprises. And then I learned to know higher, and I saw a lot of similarities, some with success, some with most with less success or failures even. And based on those experiences, I also helped corporate companies in trying to adopt more entrepreneurship, more motivation in the workplace, more psychological safety. And I noticed that companies, there was a potential for companies to come together and learn from each other based on real practical experiences, their own experiences, rather than hiring one or two experts or gurus coming to tell them about the next and latest methodology. So that's, and then maybe to finalize the storyline, when I stepped out of my last endeavor, which was an investment platform, I brought together my people in my network, some of which were already on your platform here. And we went for 3 days to an island to talk about organizations and what organizations could need to improve and evolve in terms of corporate culture. And that's actually where the idea of Unbossers was generated. And I decided there and then that I would invest my time, energy, and resources to get it off the ground.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Most people, young people, have bad experiences with corporations, but then just carry on with corporations. Not many people leave and want to change the shape of corporations.
Well, there's many ways to try to have a positive impact, and I see also many of my peers having fantastic, amazing careers within the same organizations and having influence, a positive influence on their organization in that way. I just had another calling, let's call it that way.
Well, it's good to have a calling, isn't it? And you talk about maximizing human value, which is people become entrepreneurs and zero distance to customers combined. Can you talk a little bit about that, Nick? How did you come to that?
Yeah, and maybe link that to customers on board, and also the ownership structure that we're setting up for Unbossers. So basically, I've always assumed that the most powerful tool to motivate people to embrace an entrepreneurial lifestyle and to think in terms of the mission of the company and the customer was to invite them and become part of the shareholder structure. So basically giving them the power to both decide on the strategy and the direction of the company, and having the right to earn profits and dividends if the company is successful. And looking back on the past 10 years, I had to admit that assumption is often wrong. So what I noticed is that it changes people, but not always in a good way. What I mean with that is I saw it can make even the most purpose-driven, most customer-driven people, when they talk, they became quite greedy Wall Street boys, let's say. So I saw people becoming very protective rather than thinking of others. I saw people thinking about their own personal risks rather than doing things for the greater good. And it influenced decision-making, but not in line or to service the mission of the company. And that was both when businesses were going great, as well as when businesses were failing. And so my conclusion was, I thought it was maximizing human value. I thought it would motivate people to become entrepreneurs and think in terms of customers. And I really often saw the opposite. And that's where I started thinking about other types of ownership structures.
And you talk about the entrepreneurial lifestyle, but
yeah.
Wait, what do you mean by that? Can you talk a bit about that, Nick?
Yeah, it's
what does it mean?
Well, it means that you love your work just like you love your wife and your children, I think. And so it means that you give up 50% of the rights that you have in the company, and you double the duties that you have for the company and the mission. I think, and you put yourself really in service of helping your colleagues and in the end the customer. And there's already many management books written about that, I think, but that to me is like the essence of you love the company, or you love your work like you love your wife and your children.
Yeah, so being an entrepreneur is not about creating something, then making money from it. That's not the objective. It's more of a kind of a work and life decision.
Yeah. It's an integral part. It becomes a passion, and hopefully the result is a beneficial financial outcome, because financial results are important. But yeah.
It's about impact.
It's about impact. Yeah, having impact, creating things together with others, seeing some potential, something that could be better, and then trying to act on that, and then seeing it step by step turn into reality, the potential that you saw. And I think this it sounds maybe all like fluid, but I think it works for anyone in any role, in any company. Because I saw a question, does it work in any industry? So I think it does.
Laurent, you're CFO of the Projective Group. Can you tell us about your involvement, how you came to be involved, and then tell us about what the Projective Group, what it is and what it does?
So the Projective Group is actually a consultancy and change management organization active in the financial sector. So our clients are banks and insurance companies. We're active in mainland Europe and the United Kingdom, and we always say that we actually have 1,100 entrepreneurs on board. So we have 1,100 people in total, and I think what sets us apart from traditional, I would say, consultancy companies, if I can call them like that, is that we have a very flat structure. We have no hierarchy at all, and we just expect people to have impact. And when we were talking about what is an entrepreneur, well, at least in our mindset, it's having impact on yourself, on your own career, on your clients, but also on the entire environment around you. And so we strongly believe in the fact that you're not a company on your own, but you're part of an ecosystem with your clients, with your customers, but also with other companies delivering services, delivering goods to the community. And that's why we've combined actually our company with an investment fund. That investment fund invests in a number of other companies that usually are companies that offer services to the same clients, but services that are different from ours. And the reason why we've done that is because we believe that you can offer services to a client, but it's even better if you bundle your forces with other companies that offer other services, and that when added to your services, give even more value to the client. And so that investment fund has as investor our employees, but also the employees of the other companies that we work with. And by doing that, we make sure that every employee in our company and also in the other company pushes actually the services of the other companies to clients to actually maximize the value for clients. So
Super cool.
It's what we believe in is instead of just trying to compete each other and try and convince everybody that you're the best. No, choose your battles, be the best in one or a number of services, and create alliances with the other companies that offer other services, and that actually, when combined with yours, deliver even more value.
And how many employees have you got at the moment?
So we have 1,100 employees today.
Yeah, so it's
spread over 5.
Yeah, so it's like a significant organization, because in most cases where people talk about that there not being a hierarchy, as companies grow, hierarchy tends to creep in some way.
It does, and it's an everyday challenge. It's an everyday work to make sure that we don't end up there. Over the last years, we've actually grown significantly by executing a buy and build strategy. So we've acquired a number of companies that actually deliver the same service as we do to grow actually our geographic footprint. And obviously, you have to make sure that everybody understands the model that we have built, and even though you see that on DNA, on culture, at high level, it all looks the same, the devil is in the details, and we have to work every day to make sure that indeed we keep our DNA, we keep that flat structure, and everybody understands that it's actually better to all work towards the same goal together than to actually try and defend the P&L of one entity or one service line. So that's also the reason why when we talk about bonuses, etc., we have one aim. It's the group. And it's the group that needs to progress. It's the group that needs to grow. It's the group that needs to have more impact on its clients. And so the entire remuneration of everybody is actually based on the results of the entire group. Just to avoid too much competition and unhealthy competition between the different entities of the group and different service lines of the group.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when you go into organizations as consultants, so you're bringing more than consulting, aren't you? So you're kind of investing, and is that easy for your clients to understand? Are they always comfortable with it?
No, they're not, because they sometimes ask questions. Yeah, but you're bringing in someone else. Why do you do that? And then is it the same shareholder behind, or what's the logic of bringing in two different companies here? So it does raise question with clients. Now, what usually happens is that you actually enter for solving one problem. And only once you've got the problem really shaped well, you bring in other solutions. So usually, the clients discover actually the solutions that we can bring together with us actually evolving in the case that we're solving for them. But it is indeed a challenge, because the organization from the outside can look quite complex.
Yeah. No, it's interesting about the entire field of ecosystems, and the kind of thing you're talking about here is the level of complexity is inherently high. Complexity and ambiguity.
Yeah.
And these are things actually organizations have historically run away from at high speed.
No, it is, and I think it's, like I said earlier, it's a continuous challenge, and so you really need to work on that. Also, we are currently in a situation where we said, okay, well, we have too many brands, and we used to position it as really like planets, and say, well, we have different planets, and if you have problem A, go to planet A. If you have problem B, go to planet B. And we now came to the conclusion that probably a bit like in the higher model, well, you need to have some overarching at least name that people understand, that say, okay, well, if I have a problem, and that's the target we're working to, if I have a problem in financial services in Europe, I need Projective Group. And whether then below it is company A or B or C that is actually solving the problem is of less importance. So we're actually working on creating that, I would say, that wrap around the different solutions that we offer. But still, we want to make sure that we keep the individuality of each of the individual service lines, because you don't want to create something that is just the toolbox and we can solve everything, because that is not the case.
Yeah. So if a client has, I mean, your emphasis is if a client has a problem, you will work and you'll bring other people in, other organizations in to help them solve that problem, which is a very different, a very different focus from traditional consulting, which is
I think what we try and do is only leave the client once the problem is solved, and not just tell them how to solve the problem and then walk away.
Well, it's what consultants should do. But
I agree. I couldn't
actually solve problems. It's an idea, isn't it? But William, it'd be good to bring you in at this point. And I know you're in China at the moment, and it's late in the evening. But so we'll listen to Nick and Laurent outline their thinking and what they're doing, which is what they're doing seems to me brilliant. Can you make sense of it from your perspective? You've been involved in this space for some time, and your stuff's all about strategy execution, making things happen, and you know Hire and their model very well. So how does this fit in? Can you give us the context?
Yeah, so my sense of this is from the Unbosser perspective, and what Nick has put together is when he explained this to me, I'm like, Nick, this is the end game. This is where we've got to go. And what do I mean by that? Well, having the user participate in zero distance and then delivering value to them, great. The value's there. And in the Hire model, it's all about lifetime value creation. So we're going to come back and iterate, upgrade, change, et cetera, over time to, satisfy the ongoing needs and opportunities that a particular user would have. And what Nick is bringing into the equation is how do we get the user, the customer, the user actually involved with the ecosystem through economic participation as well as governance, or being able to help make decisions about certain things. And, where I made sense on this years ago, and I don't know if this is actually true in Europe or others, but in America about 30 years ago, there was a huge movement called the food cooperatives. And this was born out of essentially the hippies of the 60s. They were trying to get their own, carve out a grocery store, if you would, that would have sustainable, organic, non-chemical based products that would lead to health and sustainability. And so my sense about this is it was born 30 years ago because I joined a co-op and I was a member. I shopped at the store. I got annual commission checks that was profit sharing. I was able to go to all the board meetings, but my job was essentially to help those decision makers that were running the co-op as to what products do I want? What products do I need? So what they had done very sophisticatedly and very simply is provide the chance for if you would, an echo chamber of what's the customer looking for, et cetera. And when I got what I wanted, why would I go to any other, food co-op to get what I need? And so this is just the products kept growing over and over and over. And I could argue that Whole Foods was essentially a branch off of that concept, but they went corporate and they went their own way. And of course they have their own economic structure, et cetera. But I felt when I heard Nick talk about this, I'm going, wow, this is when you bring the concepts of sustainability. It's an easy word to say, but when you really try to get down to it, what are you talking about? What does it look like in the practical here-today moments of running the business? Well, sustainability for me was, the food co-op would keep growing. And I can tell you, organic products are not cheap. So these were sold with high value and fairly good margins in there. But it kept me coming back, and it kept me coming back because I was committed to health and happiness. I wasn't committed to, the money side of the thing. And so for me, the sustainability part was already acting. And I really enjoyed the conversation with Nick when he was beginning to talk about structure of rights. So there's rights on different shares that would be allocated. And those rights are on profit sharing and on governance, essentially. And I believe that if you look at a system or a strategy, you can pretty much begin to predict the sustainability or the thrivability of a particular strategy based on looking at the incentives. This is well known for people that are in the systems, area, that the incentive structures are a great leverage and have a large impact on what are you going to get out of this if you in fact have the system operating. And so I'm a true believer that if we really get the incentives right, we're going to see, a next generation of RenDanHeYi where lifetime value means it will be even more, as they say, sticky. I won't want to leave in the companies that I'm participating with because I'm so ingrained with them. They know me, I know them, etc. Now imagine your customer receiving profitability of your company afterwards as part of being part of this ecosystem. I thought this was just truly going to be a very profound next move, another up-leveling of what we call sustainability, lifetime value creation. So for me, I'm all in, and I'm waiting, right, to see how these models come and where I can actually increase my health and happiness. I'm going to go look. I'm going to go look for those elements that are going to increase that part of me and my family and my life to move forward. So that's kind of my short story just to get started there.
I think we need to pause just to think about customers. So customers are not just giving you money, they're getting money back from the value that's created. Yeah.
Yes. So maybe I can explain it with the example of Unbossers, if that's okay. So the customers pay a fee to participate in the ecosystem and to receive the facilitation of Unbossers to act as consultants to one another. That's the first phase. I think in a later phase, there could also be facilitation to co-create new products and services, but that's for later. And so the revenue is the sum of fees minus the cost of the facilitation. And so we did two things. First and foremost, the profit that's there at the end of the year is redistributed, will be redistributed to the companies that participate in the ecosystem, but with the condition that they use it to invest it in their own organization to accelerate the evolution of their corporate culture. So that's where William says profit sharing. And the second thing is that we are transitioning the ownership, the governance of the ecosystem to an independent board where representatives of customers and partners resides, but they have no financial interest. The only interest that they have in mind is that the ecosystem evolves and creates activities that are in line with the needs that the participants in the ecosystem have. And then lastly, there's still, you could say, so it's a foundation, partially, but it's also a profit organization. So we want to generate profit, but the profit is redistributed. And there's also still chance for investors to participate. They get a fair, maximized return on their investment, but they have no say, no influence in the governance of the organization and the ecosystem. And I think that brings together a number of interesting pieces of the puzzle which already exist in the legal laws of any country, but we just mix them up together to make sure and maintain that even in the long term, even when there's great success, the majority of the profit is reinvested in the mission of the ecosystem and therefore back into the participants of the ecosystem.
Because I suppose that's the ultimate question. Is it scalable?
It is. Well, there are examples of, a network ecosystem or an ecosystem itself is by definition scalable.
Yeah. And it's interesting,
I
William.
think
Yeah. Sorry, Laurent, carry on.
No, I was going to chip in from a client perspective. I think what we see is the larger the Unbossers network will become, the more value we get back as a client, because the more interactions you have, so the more people you can have just exchanging IDs. So it is scalable by definition. Then obviously you don't want to put more and more people in the same room all the time. So you're probably gonna split it up in smaller nucleuses at a certain point in time. But by definition, the more scale it has, the more value it generates.
Let's some points been made in the chat about, and William kind of alluded to it as well, the questions about governance, contracts, trust. Alexandra from Poland says, are these collaborations based on trust, or do you have strict contracts in place? And I think I know HeYi have been working with kind of dynamic contracting, and so contracts and trust kind of get to the heart of it, don't they? What level of...
I think it all starts with a trust and obviously a shared vision on the world and how to do business. But as long as that is not translated into hard commitments and contracts, as long as you do not change the shareholder contracts from a traditional contract to the mindset and the philosophy that you want to see as being behaved in the ecosystem, it remains a bunch of good intentions. So you need both. The starting point is trust, but you need to translate into contracts and into the system.
And I think what we the starting point is indeed always trust. Huh? What we see on our side is that what works the best is to have a framework agreement in which you lay down the principles. But then, of course, every interaction is actually a new project that you do together, might have slightly diverging contractual agreements. So you end up having a specific contract for each assignment. And obviously, if you look at the contracts that we sign, they evolve over time. So the 15th collaboration might have a different contractual setting than the first one. But the general principles that you have in the framework agreement should all still be there. If not, then the relation is probably no longer viable.
Evolving contracts.
By the way, I believe that many of the so-called cultural transformations that many organizations do fail because they stay at the level of the slogans and the words, and whatever is presented in those cultural strategies is not translated into the labor contracts, the shareholder contracts, and so on. And I think as long as that step is missing, it's almost impossible to really catalyze the entire transformation to its full end. William, I see you nodding.
I agree. And my question to you is, have you thought through what's the mindset shift? You know, you talked about your company is based on, growing new cultures. In this particular, concept you have, what do you think are the mindsets that are absolutely critical at the top of the list that have to be dealt with? And
mindsets in which context?
Well, if you're going to have profit sharing, so the customer is actually, receiving economic benefit as well as other types of value and benefits, what do you think the mindset is of the people orchestrating that ecosystem have to be to embrace this now extension where profitability is going to flow to the people that you serve?
Good question. I'm looking at Laurent.
I think it's it all boils down in the end to having like the same. You were talking, William, about the end game, and it's sharing that view on the end game. If you have a completely diverging view on where you want to go, on how you want to run your business, on how you want to take care of your people, it's not going to work. If you share that vision, it does fly. And what we see with Unbossers is that actually Nick was able to bring together a number of companies that actually share those values and that want to learn from each other. And that is actually what I think makes it fly. So it's that open mindset and knowing that you can always learn every day from everybody. That value sits in putting things together, sharing a common view on how should I put this? On how in the end society would work better than it works today.
And I think that's the biggest challenge, the mindset shift. I noticed that, well, there's obviously a lot of enthusiasm and people find it inspirational what we're trying to do, but inviting customers onto your board, for example, some reactions we get from corporate companies like, okay, but are we by law allowed to take on such a role in an ecosystem? And you just notice that it takes time for people to transition and for companies to transition from the typical supplier-customer relationship. You're either a supplier or you're a customer of something, to being part of an ecosystem in which you take on all those roles at the same time, and you constantly supplying some value to someone and receiving value from someone else in the ecosystem, and you just notice that mindset shift really takes time.
Yeah, there's a comment from Andreas Holmer in Thailand, who says that most organizations will balk at something like this because they're stuck in traditional competitive strategic us versus them mindsets, and the new rules involve creating more value than we capture, and that really does require a new mindset. It's difficult to argue with that. It requires a new mindset, but also strikes me that it requires a totally different approach to management. I mean, as Laurent says, one of the jobs of the manager becomes stopping the hierarchy forming. And then you've got to manage the incentives. And that, as William pointed out, incentives are really important, but your incentives are based around organizational performance rather than teams or individuals. So for managers, it's a completely different role. William?
Yeah, you know, and at Hire, there are no managers, right? They say there's no managers in management. So in some cases, you know, those roles become obsolete as the system becomes more optimal in delivering the value and creating that value. And I think this is part of the shift in these mindsets, is that managers in particular have to really understand that there will be a shift. I personally believe it will come to a certain degree. It's going to be driven by the external issues in the world, food supply, geopolitical, you name it. We're going to see more opportunities now to enter into a new world, to build new systems that don't extract to the point that we kill ourselves, right? That we just destroy the very, you know, foundation of what we live on in nature. So for me, letting go of the need to control, which is a very big mindset shift for many leaders. If you can't get that single thing done, it's going to be very difficult. You will be disingenuous. People will spot you out going, you are not authentic. You want to do this, but you act differently because they don't want to let go of control. And so there are certain things, I believe, that are going to be critical to allow the system to continue to enable itself to bring the user along as they are community. They are part of us. They are not separate, right? So it gets into a very interesting, you know, concept of quantum physics. There is no other you. There is no other community. We are the entity. We are the community helping ourselves make a better world. And I think people will be ignited by that. I see young folks, teenagers, young kids now, they're absolutely, that's what they want to participate in. And they're walking away from these big corporate jobs and BMWs coming out of the, you know, on your first job, et cetera. They just don't have any value anymore because they see what needs to be done. And I think RenDanHeYi is going to lead in that evolutionary game because it's open. It's to your point, Laurent, it's all about sharing knowledge and sharing what we know and being passionate about it and making a difference. So I think from that standpoint, you know, it's just an exciting time to be alive when you understand that there is a different option than what we have now in the corporate world.
You know, when we hire quite some graduates every year, and we've seen the questions shift over the years from what will I make, you know, can I travel, to today, what do you do as actually to give back to community? That's one of the #1 questions that we get from a lot of people. What do you do as a corporation to actually help the environment around you? That's one. And two, what can I learn here? And what are you going to do to support me to learn? Those are actually the 2 most important questions that that we see today. So what you just mentioned, William, is something that we see on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and if I may chip in, it reminds me a lot of reactions, and I also saw one reaction in the comment that reminded me of that. Is unbossing, you want to eliminate the boss, you want to get rid of hierarchical structures. And I want people really to understand that's all secondary. It's all changing your decision-making processes, changing your structures, changing your meeting formats. It's all a consequence of simply trying in every interaction, whether you're the CEO, whether you're a laborer, whether you're cleaning the offices, in every interaction, are you trying to help others? Are you humble? Do you understand that you're always in service of a customer? Are you trying to do the good thing? And the more interactions that you achieve doing that, and it's quite hard because we have this little voice that makes us sometimes feel better than others, or sometimes feel worse than others, or makes us scared. But the more interactions you achieve doing that, then the outcome of that, without any doubt, is that you change your hierarchical structure, that your decision-making processes will change, that the way you generate revenue and what you do with your profits will change. But that's all an outcome. The only thing I want to unboss is the little voice in our head that prevents us from doing that.
Yeah, well put. So what's next? What's going to happen in the next year? What have you got planned, Nick?
So next year, well, in Belgium, we're the first company that is trying to do this. So we will be sharing our legal documents on how to set up such an organization freely, so that they can be an example for other companies that want to follow and strive for similar principles. And next to that, I'm just hoping that a lot of companies believe that corporate culture is key these days. With digitalization and AI, I think human interaction is becoming scarce and super valuable, so that corporate culture is important, and that they just join and help each other create better organizations, not just their own, but also other organizations help each other, and therefore create a better corporate world. If we make a small step in that direction next year, then I'll be happy. And for you, Laurent?
Well, our team for the coming, I'd say 12 months is being relevant. And we label that as being relevant for each and every employee. So each and every employee needs to feel relevant, needs to feel that they have an impact. It's making the company even more relevant than today towards our clients. So it's really working on, being actually, I would say, looks like we lost connection. Are we still on?
Yeah.
So it's being even more relevant than today, and actually helping our clients and the community succeed.
Chris has put the 6 principles for Unbossers in the chat. Very helpful. William, you're very optimistic and excited about the possibilities here.
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of hope. If I didn't, I should just go to the beach and forget about it. But I believe the more discussions that we have about regeneration versus degeneration is where we have to go. And so think about, regenerative strategies. And that's what I'm about. And I'm hoping that, every single conversation, it's starting to grow now. I had a conversation with Nick a year ago, and we're now into an ecosystem and things we had never even thought about. And I have probably 10 of those going on now with just, professional peers of mine that are going, I got to get out. I'm done with the consulting company stuff. I really want to go do something that's sustainable and is going to make an impact. And for me, it's just getting that message out, continue to have the conversation, and little by little, the quantum field will respond. I am for regeneration, not degeneration. There you go. I've stated my philosophy.
Well, it's good, and it's snappily expressed as well, William. So if people want to find out more information, Nick, where can they look, and what's that?
On LinkedIn, Nick the Unbosser, or the Unbossers LinkedIn page, and then unbossers.com, and definitely also take a look at the website of Projective Group.
Projectivegroup.com.
Projectivegroup.com, and follow William on LinkedIn. He always shares amazing and cool content on all these things. So yeah,
we're out of time. Brilliant conversation, Nick. Thank you very much, Laurent. Brilliant, and really kind of you to join us. Really appreciate your insights. This, as William said, this is a really positive and different and challenging way forward for organizations, but there's an element of necessity about it. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you everyone for watching. If you want to learn
Good one,
more,
Eva.
follow the links, and a good comment, authentic interactions. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.